Now I know what you're thinking. How on earth can you cut sales and double your profits? In fact, how can less sales mean more profits at all? Well, the answer is that not every sale is equal. Now, before we get into the detail, I'd like you to do me a quick favour, and that's click the subscribe button below. Now, I post new content every week and I would love to be able to share it with you. Okay, well, if you've not come across me before, let me introduce myself before we start. My name's Paul, okay, and I'm an accountant, I'm a CFO, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've spent over 25 years helping businesses to grow profitably. And not only that, I've also run 3 businesses on my own over that time. So believe me when I say I know what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and I know how tough that can be. And that's why I started up this channel. And today, actually, I'm going to focus on one of those businesses which I ran, which was called the Kemp Townhouse. Okay, it was a small hotel. It was an 11-bedroom hotel on the south coast of England, which we owned and ran for about 6 years. And I can tell you, I learned so much in the experience, okay? Now let me give you some of the background. So we bought this business, it was an existing business, this was back in 2012, right? And it was turning over a decent amount of money for a small business. It wasn't making any money, but it was a really lovely boutique hotel, lovely experience, and it had a lot of potential. And so we bought a business, inherited the business and the staff and everything. And because I was new to the hotel business, I decided just to run things as they have been run by the previous owners, as I learned the business, okay? And something quite interesting happened, okay? We managed to grow the sales, okay? In fact, we grew the sales quite a lot, by about 50%, by literally doing the same thing that the previous owners had been doing, which was kind of plugging away, doing certain bits of marketing, not being particularly clever with what we were doing, but working really hard, emailing our existing customers, getting them back. And as I say, we had some good success there. We grew the business by 50%. And when I say business, I mean the revenues, the sales. But actually, I got a bit of a shock at the end of the year, because when we looked at how much profit we made, we actually made less profit than the previous guys had, because actually not every sale is equal. And so something really drastic had to change as we went into year 2, okay? And that was to fundamentally change our approach from focusing on sales, on revenue, to focusing on profitability. Now, I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience in chasing the top line, working really, really hard, growing sales, but still never having any money in the bank at the end of the day, or showing any profit, or even showing enough profit that that you need to live on. If you've had that experience, I'd really love to hear from you. So do drop me a line in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts. Share your experience with us. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so what did we do in year 2? Let's look at how things changed. Well, as I say, we focused from, instead of focusing on sales, to focusing on profitability. And that meant we had to literally go back to scratch, and we kind of looked, the first thing we did was we had a really good look at the numbers, okay? Now, I'm an accountant, obviously numbers are relatively easy for me, and I know they're not easy for everybody, but actually it really is the starting point. We kind of broke down our kind of accounts on a monthly basis, okay, and we looked at how much money we're making. We were looking how much discounts we were giving at certain times of the year. We looked at how our costs, each category of costs, how they were changing over time. Which of those costs varied with sales. So for example, running a guest house, you can imagine what the costs were, how much we were spending on kind of housekeeping costs, suppliers, how much on staff, how much on food and beverage costs, all of those costs which vary depending on how busy you are, and looking at when they were increased and when they didn't increase. So that was the first thing we did, okay? And what really what brought it home to me wasn't just looking at numbers in total. You can look at a number and say, okay, my food and beverage costs were $5,000 last month. It's like, is that good? Is that not good? It's just a number. But actually, when you start breaking that down by the number of units you're selling, in our case it was the number of room nights that we sold, it made it the number of products you're selling. This also applies for services, maybe the number of orders you've taken for service. When you start breaking things down into units, it becomes really, really clear, okay? So we found that we were charging on average, it was quite a nice boutique hotel, probably about $200 per unit in terms of revenue. But actually, when we looked at the profit, we were saying we were making about, at the start, about $10 for every room night. And actually, when you kind of look at actually your food and beverage costs being $5, you know, you can imagine if that goes up just by $5, all of a sudden I'm not making $10, which to be honest isn't great to start with. You know, you halved your profits just by little things going up. You know, if you look at, in our case, how much we were spending on housekeeping, you know, time to clean each room. How could we do that more efficiently? You know, we could save another kind of $2 or $3 there. And actually by looking at costs on a unit by unit basis, things really start to stand out in terms of what's going well and what's not going well, and whether you think actually a number makes sense or doesn't make sense. So that was the first thing that we did, okay? So the first thing is really knowing your numbers. Another thing that actually can be quite helpful, if you're kind of looking at I guess what you're selling, and we call it kind of a product mix depending on what you're selling. For us it was rooms, but rooms at different times of year, actually ranking those sales in order of profit rather than sales. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you can get to the stage where you're looking at profit per item, whatever it is you happen to be selling, working out why in some months were these items making this amount of money, and why in other months were they only making that amount of money. And for us, running a guest house, a hotel, it was completely driven by seasonality and the level of discounts that were being given. And so you really need to kind of then start to be a little bit more ruthless, okay? You need to, once you kind of have this information, you know, kind of costs and discounts and revenues on a per unit basis, you can start to make some really quite strategic decisions in terms of focusing on how you can become more profitable. And that's exactly what we did, okay? We found a big area, which is an area which I think most businesses struggle with. That is focusing on promotions, okay? Now, we all know that, you know, you have to give money off or run a promotion to get more business in. And at certain times of year, depending on what your business is, you're going to have to give more money off than others. But too often than not, businesses aren't necessarily very smart in the kind of promotions that they're offering. And we found that in the guest house, actually, just kind of reducing, okay, it's out of season a bit now, let's cut the prices by 50%. Absolute rubbish, okay? You're running promotions like that, kind of killed our business. When we looked at things on a monthly basis, we were finding initially we were making a nice profit over the summer, breaking even autumn, winter, but making a huge, autumn and spring, but in the winter making a huge loss. You know, because the discounts we were giving meant we weren't covering the costs in any way. And so actually being a bit smarter about the types of promotions that we were running and when we were running them made a huge difference to our business model. And that's something that I really urge you to do. Don't just do things which you've always done before. Just think a bit more smartly about how perhaps you can do things differently. Perhaps look at what your competitors are doing, because that's another really good sign. You know, if someone else is doing something different and that seems to be working, give it a try yourself, okay? And then once you've made some changes like that, leave them for a while. I'd suggest let them run and review them after sort of 2 or 3 months, and then have a look at what we'd call do a wash up. You know, what's worked, what's not worked, what needs tweaking, and then kind of rinse and repeat, as they say in the old shampoo adverts. You know, repeat what's working, cut what's not working, and keep going around. Have like a 3-month cycle for looking at what you're changing in your business, and then actively working out what's working and what's not. Okay, and that way you're gonna really focus on growing your profit rather than sales. And actually you can make a huge difference to your profit. That's what we did in our year 2 of business at the guest house, at the hotel. We actually doubled our profits and sales dropped back to where they were in the first year we ran it, purely because of this strategy. And actually everything then made sense. It kind of took the pressure off a bit, you know. We were all making money, the staff were happier. It was a really lovely place to be. I'm going to give you a little bit of detail in terms of what we did, because I think depending on your business you might find it helpful. So we talked about looking at our promotions, which was a big thing. You know, we evaluated the partnerships we had, the promotional partnerships we had with different people, worked out which ones were really working in terms of profit, not just sales. We then looked at the pricing model we had, okay? You know, this applies to many businesses, but particularly businesses where you have what we call sort of perishable items, things that go off, you know, things like selling hotel rooms. If it's not sold that night, that room night's gone forever, okay? So we implemented a variable pricing structure, which meant that we kind of focused on where the demand was, and prices were higher when there was more demand, and we pulled it back when there was less demand, but being smarter about that, rather than just saying, let's give 20% off or 30% off, actually watching the prices on a daily basis, those kind of things, which you kind of think, oh, that's a fad. But actually, there's great software that you can use for these kind of things, and absolutely completely change the dial in terms of profitability. We also, you know, talked about making some bold decisions early on, but actually we did that with the hotel. We decided that we were going to close the business in January. You know, nobody came to the South Coast on holiday in January. They just didn't, okay? And so actually, we had all the costs of keeping the hotel open. So what we decided to do, we're just going to close for 4 to 6 weeks, kind of all the Jan, first bit of Feb, and use that time to kind of do kind of the bigger kind of maintenance jobs, the kind of repairs that are much more difficult to do when the hotel was open. And we saved a small fortune just by doing that. So literally what we're saying here, I hope you begin to get the idea, is that not every sale is equal. And so by doing the things that we've talked about today, which is knowing your numbers, perhaps ranking your sales types over the last 12 months and working out which ones are more profitable than not, and then working out why, what can we do about that, you know, in terms of what learnings we can take from that, how can we replicate that, you can make a huge difference with your business. We also talked about reviewing our promotions, which is a key thing, you know, and promotions need to be a win-win, both for the customer, but also for you as a business owner. And then that whole point about not just making some changes and leaving them, but making some changes and then reviewing after 2 or 3 months, and having a regular review cycle means that you can in a relatively short time make a huge difference to your profitability. And it's so much easier to make existing sales profitable than it is to go out chasing new business all the time. You know, get the model right first, get the profitability right first, and then you can grow the business. That's the way that all successful businesses go. Well, I hope you found that helpful. It's a little bit of an insight into one of the businesses that I had over time, and so you learned an awful lot out of it. I hope you found some of those helpful. I know some of those were specific to running a hotel, but the concepts behind it literally can apply to any business. So if you found them helpful, do let me know. If you'd like to perhaps know a bit more detail about any of those things we talked about, again, let me know and I'll do another video on it. I'd love to be able to share those information with you. And yeah, I guess that's what I've got to say today. I'll leave you one parting gift actually. One of the questions I'm asked about probably most often is how I can boost my bank balance as an entrepreneur. And actually, over the kind of 25 years or so that I've been working with clients, I've kind of I've come up with some kind of tried and tested strategies that you can take to boost your cash flow, in some cases almost overnight. So what I've done is I've put those top 10 tips that I have for maxing your cash flow, I put them in a free fact sheet which you can download below. And what I'll also do is I'll also summarize some of the points we talked about in today's session in another free fact sheet below, so you can take them away and apply them to your own business. Anyway, hope you found that helpful. I'd say there's so much more I could talk about on this, so do let me know what's interesting for you. But I hope you found it helpful, and yeah, thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.